Good evening, good morrow, and good morning. Coming to you live from Olive Branch Lodge number
16.
Beautiful. We've got the one and the only, the most metal of all of our Masonic TikTok warriors and sword bearers. Check it the fuck out. Yes. Dude, all right. I was like, wait, oh, damn.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get my lodge up to speed, man. We're still rocking flannels. Like, no. Modern century. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. What we are doing here is we're continuing a brief conversation that me and Brother Rizzatello struck up, and this is about darkness and light, one of my favorite topics here. So I'm going to start this off with a question. What to you, brother, is the purpose of light, and how often do you find yourself surrounded in a place whereby you're seeking it?
Okay, so this topic, the reason I brought this up to you the other day was it seems that a lot of individuals, especially on our social media pages where we're more public, like to broach the subject of the checkered floor in our lodges, broach the subject of light versus dark, good versus evil, the duality of man, etc., etc. So typically as Masons, we consider light to be truth or knowledge, pure knowledge, as in the good knowledge, the closer light comes from the Most High, whomever you may describe that to be, God, Buddha, whomever.
Yeah, light is liquid.
Exactly. You know, it's a blessing onto you, and you are warmed by it. You are brought to truth by it. You are, things are shown to you, like showing a flashlight, trying to find something. Things are shown to you. So in that sense of metaphor, that's where I go when someone would approach me with a question like, what do you consider light?
So why? Because I mean, it's very typical within the craft, right? Light and synonymous. It's in our symbology, it's in our lectures, it's in our language. Light. What do you seek? Light. This is why you're here, right? So what we don't often talk about is darkness and the purpose to darkness, right? The place you were before, and likewise where you are bound to go again. You talked about the checkered floor, and that is one of my favorite, very discreet Masonic symbols. This.
So I think that people think of darkness as pure evil, and it isn't. I mean, yes, there is evil in darkness. Duh, that's just a connotation that your mind makes immediately, because our ancestors way back when we were cavemen were afraid of the dark because predators were out there. So naturally, darkness and loss of light or absence of light would be a dangerous thing. So, but I don't think that it should be taken that negatively. Take for instance, you're hoodwinked when you're first brought into the lodge, and then subsequently through each other degree, you're hoodwinked. There's a reason for that. We are bringing you to light. We are showing you truth, because previously you did not know these truths or these ideas or subject matter. You may have had an inkling of it. You may have had a little, Milwaukee flashlight and saw some stuff on the internet, but you don't know how we will give it to you, we as Masons. And in a similar vein, I think I like the phrase that there cannot be shadow without light. Because once you metaphorically go to this place of pure, unadulterated light, the sun, for instance, it is pure, unadulterated light, energy. You are just enveloped in this. There's nothing left to learn. You're perfect. And once you become perfect, you're no fun anymore. That's it. That's the end. You're done.
What I like a lot about the visuals which come with the way you describe this, right, is because I oftentimes I imagine, you're quite literally walking towards the sun. At a certain point in time, it's going to be really, really fucking dark. You're traveling vast wastes of space, right? There is nothing around you outside of this single, very finite point, often on a horizon. You can't
North Star.
There you go. You're following this star. And as such, every step you get closer and closer and closer towards it, this light is becoming brighter, but it's becoming more and more all encompassing, right? It starts to almost blind you. Oftentimes the light is something whereby we seek the light, we want the light. If we got the light straight on, we couldn't see anymore, right? There's nothing left for you to do. Like you described, you have attained that which you seek to attain. In certain cases, if it's death by fire, then let it be.
Or as
But
Metallica says, it's the light in front of the train that's coming down the tracks at you.
Shit, no, that's more often not. So if let's look at light as a realization. So we talk, I mean, there is kind of the forced from darkness to light, where it's like, listen, I'm gonna blindfold your ass, and then at this point in time, you are now in darkness. I can create almost like a synthetic experience here, but in life, it's very raw, right? Bite the pillow, we're going in. It does not give you that kindness. 9 times out of 10, the light at the end of the tunnel is something coming to plow your ass down.
It's abrasive. It's very abrasive, and at least within the fraternity, when you're hoodwinked and you're being brought into, as we say, the metaphorical light of the lodge, you are, at least in New Jersey, we have this thing called the I can't think of the name of it, the interrogatory, which is a series of questions and statements that our senior master of ceremony is to say to the new initiate. Other states, they don't have senior master ceremonies. They have the stewards do it, this portion of the degree work. But it's a series of questions that you are asked before you even step foot in the lodge as a candidate. And you are told that, okay, it might seem scary at first, but don't worry about it. There's always going to be somebody there guiding you. There's always going to be some hand on you. And you're also kind of pushed to the idea of give up your sight. Don't look for light and use your other senses. Smelling, hearing, things like that. So in a negative way, as we just discussed, light can be bad. It's blinding. You don't get to see or experience the other things around you. They say don't look at the sun because it hurts you.
Because it's a legitimate thing. You're supposed to see and understand the sun by looking at everything it does, not by direct contact.
Right. And if it is, it's through multiple different lenses to bring the strength of the sun down.
It's there's a process to
that
it,
lever.
Wrong lever. So this is that part where I think we get into really interesting kind of dynamic today, right? Where there is truth. There is this process of revelation and understanding and discovering light, but oftentimes we're looking through it with the wrong senses. We're looking through it with the wrong space. If you're in a pitch black room, insert sensory deprivation chamber, so to speak, how do you navigate the dark?
Exactly. How does one know a Mason in the dark as well as in the light? Same situation. You have to use your other senses. You have to use your hearing and your touch, smell possibly, taste possibly, depending on your situation. So a food may look good because you see it, but then once you try to ingest it, your body rejects it because it's poison. So
that could turn into a whole ass tangent. But you're right? You have to engage with it, but you have to be able to gain the ability to understand something beyond these base senses, right? Beyond these base, almost animalistic drives. So I think this is a really interesting connection when you look in the craft and the way that it teaches the construction of the moral self, something that is not physical, it is not inherently emotional, right? But it is in fact what's the right word for it? It's a little something different, right? You're having to engage with intangible parts of yourself in order to improve the very tangible parts of yourself, the things which are so, they're vastly powerful.
It's absolutely a psychological improvement. And that's one of the things we talked about last time we had a podcast where I said that what is the benefit of joining a lodge? There definitely is a psychological improvement if you take the more allegorical approach to the symbols that you are taught. So yeah, you definitely have to go to the moral, to the psychological, to then show the physical change that you are going through, be it losing weight or being a better husband, or being a better father, or any of these things that we try to tout that Masonry helps us do. But I want to go back to darkness for a second, and how it's not negative, and how it shouldn't be taken as that literal form of the void, the negativeness,
L'appel
the
de vide, oui.
yeah. L'appel de vie. Yeah, I have that often.
I think it's New Jersey.
Maybe part of it. I don't know. It may be part of it. um, I think that, and you said this actually in our little chat, the darkness grounds us. It brings us back to realize that we are not divine, that we should not be gatekeepers. It reminds us that we have, as the bias meter calls it, the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a bias wherein one person, say you're a PhD in physics, okay? The curse of knowledge is that you have this incredible knowledge of whatever your branch of physics is, and now you have to teach it to someone else who isn't a PhD. But in your mind, because you so easily adapted to that situation, you think you can talk to them at the same level. You can't. You know, you can't talk to a high schooler about quantum mechanics. You know, I mean, there are
Try to
some,
teach a
but
kid something, right? You know, I've
like
seen it said.
thermodynamics take us a little bit of learning in math. So that bias is called the curse of knowledge. And when someone, going back to the light allegory, when someone is so enveloped in this knowledge, this light, this truth, they need that darkness to go, oh, wait a second, now here's a better word, they need to step out of the way of the spotlight to let the light
Okay,
go to someone else.
I fucking love that, because that ties into the, this kind of visual journey we're going on in this conversation, right? If you're in a progressively dark room, or better yet, it's, the sun's going down and you look off at the trees at the horizon, they're black. You can't see detail. The only thing you can see in these places is a silhouetted form, something that is non-dimensional, one-dimensional, if nothing else. And the detail that you get is very minimal. If anything, all it's going to do is give you a general sense of direction. But if you get on the other side of that tree, right, you can see the setting sun. You can see all of the light moving coming through to this place. So my question then to you, looking at this analogy, is what in your experiences has moved you out of the spotlight? Well, what has brought you to these places? What's taken you into the darkness, to these points of introspection?
I think personally, it goes back to that curse of knowledge thing, where I try to explain something. Being a father would be a great example. You know, you're trying to teach your children something. It doesn't matter what, just to be a person, just to understand how it is to live in society. And you have these preconceived notions of this is how you're supposed to act when in social situations, or it's supposed to act when you're going to the bathroom. You don't just leave the door open like a barn and drop your drawers and go. Like, come on, there's a little bit of there's, so it's that it's that something like that, where it's like, all right, I now need to take the light that I had and turn around away from it and give it to someone else, or metaphorically move out of the way to let that light shine onto whomever it is I'm teaching. At work, perhaps, you have a technical job. So when you have a new trainee come in, you know how to code something in CSS, for instance. And you know that, if you put a semicolon over here, it's going to screw up the entire design, but they don't know that. And now you have to essentially dumb yourself down, get out of the spotlight for a second, get out of the warmth of the light, step back into the darkness of being that neophyte, and explaining to them, all right, this is why. And not explaining to them at a level up here, but going back down to their level and explaining to them why it's necessary, so that both of you can get back to that point of up here. And it's like, yeah, why'd you put that semicolon there? Duh, it's like first grade stuff, man.
Now I'm going to beat you profusely.
Exactly. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
It's the way, right? Well, so I think what's interesting for me was when you're talking about that, what I think back to both the lodge and the degree and in our conversation, right, is this purpose for continuous contact. There's officers stationed all throughout the lodge at all parts of a degree that at any point in time could and do speak and create sound and create motion. But what you're learning in that space, what you're able to receive from that space is very minimal compared to that which the trust and faith you give into your dear conductor, right? Every step you take once you have received that darkness is you're a little scared. It's a step further in darkness. I think my brothers gave me such shit because apparently I had such a stupid look on my face because I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I didn't really know what was going to happen here. And I remember the only thing like distinctively, I remember the hand on my shoulder. I remember my guide. I remember my guard. And that actually even takes me into another one. So when you look at high magic or ritualistic magic, there's a process of opening the gate. And it's always done through the process, the invocation of three things: a guardian, a guide, and an ordeal. This ordeal is a scary shit. It doesn't matter what it is. Oftentimes, mythology classifies it as like the open jaws of a snake. You're physically dying. It's the scary thing. It's the we're going to hang you from the bridge, whatever. But on one side of you, you have your guardian who will protect you. And on the other side, you have your guide who will lead you. And it is only through the invocation of these three things can you actually go through the ordeal. Can you actually travel through the gate? So when you look at within lodge and within life, right, we go through these different threshold points where you have to learn. But at all point in times, as the good Christians would say, it's in God's way, it's in God's will, right? You have to follow, you're not brought here without purpose. There is someone here to help you, right?
The Footprints poem.
Yeah, I do. I love it. It's
a beautiful piece of poetry. It is a beautiful piece of poetry, even though it's obviously written by someone else that has nothing to do with the actual Bible. But it is a beautiful piece of reassuring poetry to understand that your faith is guiding you in whatever the, as you say, ordeal is. And also, I'd like to point out, now I don't know how the ritual is done in your state, but here in New Jersey, it is only the senior deacon that guides you around the room. It's one person. He guides you by holding your arm. I recently was at the Oklahoma Indian Masonic Master Mason degree.
I still hate you, by the way.
We'll talk about that later. And I got to witness Oklahoma's opening and Oklahoma's first half of the Master Mason degree. Both of their stewards conducted the candidate by holding his hand, both of them. So as you just said, you had a guide and a guard. So I wonder if they took some inspiration from something like that.
Because I think there's something, especially when you get into the differences, right, of how different degrees and different rituals are performed, right? There is the same story, the same analogy, the same lessons being given and taught, but you're going to receive them in different ways. When I would look at, the need of darkness in many spaces is to drive and create almost like a forced introspection. Even if it's just like close your eyes at night and you're the only one in bed, or better yet, you're laying there, your wife or other significant other is next to you. The minute you close your eyes, you are alone. The minute you die, right? Whatever, even any of these moments, you blink. These are all solitary moments that the only thing which unites you with the rest of them is when your eyes are open. But when you close your eyes and you're in this darkness again, right? It's up to you to decide what is and what is not, which is really fucking terrifying personally, because my mind is not a fun place, right? No. I don't trust it to do anything outside of fuck me. It's not a good time.
I agree with you. Sleep is the cousin of death, as they say. So closing your eyes, you are truly alone. You are by yourself. You may be able to hear your partner, hear your kids, hear other things going around you, touching your blankets, smelling your animals, smelling maybe the shampoo that your partner uses or something like that. But you are still in here, in your mind, in your own sanctum sanctorum, because that's what it is. You have your 33 steps going down.
Listeners, write that down.
That's apathy. He had the line. I have to give him credit for it. But as he said, 33 degrees, 33 steps in your spine to your own sanctum sanctorum, and this is the closest thing you have to the Most High. Anyway, I think that you can make that darkness, the self-induced darkness, be it through closing your eyes or getting a hoodwink put on, or even like a surprise birthday party. You can make that darkness warm and inviting, because you know that that darkness is preparing you to be surprised, to be instructed in something new, to be shown light. And it in its of itself is its own guide. It's it's its own thing. It is its own, like we make the joke about how I'm so depressed I'm screaming into the void. Well, does the void answer back? Does the void answer back? If it doesn't, then the void just accepts everything, like Mother Earth. The void just takes it all in. Now, here's another thing, and a more scientific approach. Colors. Colors is the broken up colors, the electromagnetic spectrum, all of that is the broken up field of what we receive from the sun, what light is. What is darkness? It's a combination of all those colors.
Mm-hmm.
It's the absorption of all of those colors. It takes.
Even in magical practice, that's incarnate, right? You wear black as a protection because it has this absorbing quality to it, right? It has this aspect that it will take in anything, right? And so through your wards, through your symbolism, right? Black is an alpha color versus white is an omega color, right? One of them will dominate, the other will alleviate or free. There's like one of them will contain them all, the other will set them all out.
It's almost in the same vein. Black is almost inviting and comfortable because it does absorb. As you said, it's a shield for high magic, whereas white pushes away. It doesn't want you near it, because it could, in the case of actual physical sunlight, it harms you. You're not supposed to be this close to me. You can get somewhat close, but you're not supposed to be this close. Even if you look at biblical scripture, when the angels appeared or when Jesus appeared after his resurrection, everyone was blinded. They couldn't gaze upon the holiest of holies.
So what do you think the connection then lies in between, the symbolism between, white representing not only innocence, the blemishless, but right, if you look at the apron as the proverbial
incredibly Western idea.
Yes, no, and I do not disagree with that, but let's bend the Western form and wheel a little bit more towards these. Let's complete the circle.
Okay.
If we were to say that, as builders, we wear our aprons not just as modes of recognition, but in fact as something to protect us, right? To shield us. The fact that we wear white, in certain cases, different lodges wear gloves to protect your actions, to your hands, etc. But your apron, right? It's declared to be white as a sovereign sign. Why do you think we use that if we were to remove this aspect of the blemishless Christian form of Snow White Lamb?
That's a good question, because immediately for our minds, and even in the ritual, that's the reason we wear it. It is pure, it's innocence, it's the naivete of the individual, of not knowing that what's coming next. You're given a white apron when you are raised. When you're an EA, you're given a white apron right there. And you know what? You're making me think, because one of the very first speech I gave when I became Worshipful Master, I have a traveling apron. It's not the one that I was given when I became an EA. That is stored away, and that's not going to come out until the day I get put in the ground. So I bought a traveling apron, and it got dirty. It got stains on it, and I didn't clean it. It's wrinkled, and I didn't clean it because I wanted to show, especially during this first speech, that we are not perfect. We are flawed. We have to get our hands dirty in order to do the work. But so I don't know where white stands. I mean, at least in Japanese culture, white is typically assigned to almost demons and to like the yokai and things like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from. I don't like when you go to a funeral, in at least as far as I understand it in Japan, you are to wear black, not white. You're not supposed to be, white is a symbol, or excuse me, I had that backwards. You're supposed to wear white, not black, because white is a symbol of the afterlife. I don't know where that comes up in Shinto or in any of the mythology like that. So
Well, I think about it on a certain level when you describe, that it creates, because you said naivety and you consider innocence. Well, you're not innocent, right? Later in life, right? You're only innocent at a very small period in time in your life. In fact, you're victim in Christian mythology to all of the dominion of hell and heaven when you can comprehend right and wrong, which then distinguishes you from white and black, good and evil. So to consider that as on level as men, we take on this sign of innocence. I'll be honest, I've never met a brother who was innocent. I'm like, nah, man, you wearing that, but I'll see what's underneath. But like, flash me. But it's a really unique symbol to take on. But when I consider what you described before, right, the allegorical, but even let's talk about the real scientific. We wear white outside in the sun to protect us from the sun. Right? You want to stay cool. You want to reflect the light. You want to spare your body, your skin. Well, you insulate yourself with the thing which would absorb all of it, not just draw in one singular dimension to it. So I think it's interesting that in death, Masons say, our apron, this first gifted apron, we will lay it over this body. We will lay it over this space. So there's a very interesting ritual exposed to it.
It's when it comes, at least when it comes to clothing, it is a natural sunblock because you're using light to repel light. In that way, you're not using darkness to repel it. You're using light to repel light.
See, that tracks like real esoteric for me.
It's we. I mean, if you really want to play with that theme, light to repel light, you can think of it in the way of like, take just right now, today on TikTok, Brother Fluff and I have been having conversations all day, both on TikTok and through Messenger, comparing different things. And the biggest upset today was he put up a video about Henry Ford. And Henry Ford, as great of a man as he was, he did all this innovation for the American people. He did great for the American workers and all this other stuff. He was also a horrible anti-Semite. He propagated the protocols of Elder Zion. So the two of us, Fluff and I, went back and forth agreeably. We weren't yelling at each other, agreeably saying like, yes, he did do these great things, but you also have to realize that he was problematic, much like any other man. Not that he's special, just he was the example that was being used.
Right.
So in that respect, that was light repelling light in my mind, because both of us were true. Both of our points of view were 100% true. Brother Fluff with all of his positive things, and me coming back and saying, yeah, well, he also was this, that, and the other thing. He was mentioned in the book by the man with the funny mustache, by name, but it was light repelling light. Both of us were telling truths about one individual, or one subject in this case. Neither one of us were wrong, but they were opposite ends of the spectrum. Obviously, Brother Fluff with his very positive aspect, and mine with a very negative aspect of a same individual. So it's interesting that you wouldn't repel light with darkness. Even though it sounds like, you're fighting evil and I'm the righteous white knight and I'm fighting the black knight, things like that. That kind of image comes to your mind of heroics. It's actually not true when you think about it in the realm of either high magics, even D&D, or scientific. White doesn't repel white, or white does repel white. Black doesn't. Black absorbs it all.
I'm like, yeah, that's where it gets me, right? Is because it's almost like there's a proper path when you consider if you want to break the cycle. In Buddhism, we talk about this, where it's about limiting yourself from the karmic swing. it is not about attaching yourself to anything being good or anything being bad, but to observe a point of neutrality whereby you can allow the black to become white, white to become black, because this is, if it is white, if it is light, it will become dark, it will become black. It will, it's a guaranteed exchange. The only way you can effectively win, or not that we're looking to declare supremacy, right, but it's to declare truth, right? And there is a sovereign truth to the nature of all things, and it is not all good, nor is it all bad.
No, it's not. You can take the Taoist approach of shit happens. It's going to happen. Just let it go. Push it on. So in the same vein, as we've been talking, I heard a piece written by brother Ken Stukinski. I butchered that last name. And on the site called The Midnight Freemason. This site is helped run by Brother Robert Johnson, who is an education officer in Illinois. He's a host of the Windings of the Masonic Roundtable. He has his own podcast called Whence Came You? You may enjoy it a lot because it's very esoteric at times.
Oh, I love it. In fact, I mean, you mentioned the round table, baby. I'm a knight.
But this particular article is called Reclaiming the Rejected Stone. Now, that phrase has a little bit more meaning if you've gone through the York Rite system of degrees, but it still makes sense in a allegorical. So allow me, if you would, to read from it. In my contemplations, I often think about the lodge as a representation of my inner being. The physical world is outside, and the only thing that can enter are materials to build my temple. Before it, thoughts, commitments, or experiences. The metal tools of the profane can only be applied to such things before they become part of us. Of course, we don't vet such visitors most of the time. We allow socialization, propaganda, and attacks against us of all sorts to seep in. They become a part of us whether we want them to or not. It's too late to work on what might have, should have, or could have been. After a while, we must establish a refuse pile. Some might say this is our subconscious, those things we don't want to think about or deal with. But what if it's more of a storehouse? After all, I have a basement of tools, some of which I may never use. But surprisingly, there are times I am glad I didn't throw something away. It could be a scrap of wood, a bent screwdriver that can still pry things, or that odd piece of hardware that just happens to fit a project my wife wants me to do unexpectedly. And then there's trauma, there's hurt. There are the judgments of when we weren't good enough, or embarrassed, or just didn't win at a game we invested a lot of emotion and energy into. There are regrets. What if at least one of those stones was crafted by the great architect for a purpose we as yet do not know? What if no matter how unsquare or unfitting by our human judgment a stone is, there is some important place for it anyway? Before raising an arch, you might not comprehend what a keystone is. You don't know where it came from or why. Was it a mistake or part of some greater plan by someone greater than ourselves? What if that time we messed up or were betrayed or burned with unrequited love wasn't part of our plan, but part of a plan made for us? What if surviving some terrible thing imbued us with the strength to overcome a hardship later in life? What if our painful times of need made us more charitable to other people's hurt or needs? What if those stones are already holding up arches, making our character better throughout a life that may not as well lived without them? Maybe it's time to go through my rubbish pile, looking for that one stone that is ugly, imperfect, or just plain doesn't make sense. Maybe it's the key to something or someone I need more than I realize. Maybe the pegboard of the soul is God's trestle board. And it's my job to learn to put everything in its proper place, to figure out what each item is for, or have faith that there's a reason for everything. Then, when my task comes, I will know where to find the right tools, and the material I plan to reject, maybe even my very self, will become something of strength, wisdom, and beauty.
and drop the mic. Oh,
Again, that
oh,
was written by brother Ken Skujinski. I know I ruined that. He is from West Seneca Lodge, number 1111. He recently served as master of Kenton Lodge, number 1186. And he's a webmaster for NewYorkMasons.org.
oh shit. All right. All right. Throwing the shout outs. I love that. We'll put links down below.
Yep. So also I'll send you that link so you can forward that through. But yeah, that was read off by Robert Johnson on Whence Came You. And I think the idea of the rubbish pile, the idea of darkness being behind us, but still useful, still being able to connect with someone who may be profane in the way, if we bring the microcosm down to TikTok, we get those individuals who come in here with these inane conspiracy theories. But if we reach back into that rubbish pile of things that we've had to deal with, or that darkness from which we came, we can bring that forward and go, yeah, I remember thinking like that. And this is why it changed. Or here's the tool to help guide you and correct your own stone.
So what I really see in this space, and granted, I have not taken any of the York Rite degrees. I'm a Blue Lodge boy, and part of me is really active. That's where I
And
want to be
that's
to
really
stay.
good. No, seriously, it needs it.
I think about it to a certain degree to imagine that nothing, and because I was going through proficiencies with another one of my brothers before we got on the call, and one of the things that he asked me a question, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's a high likelihood that that's intended by why it was written that way, because nothing is done in any degree in life, in actuality, in lodge, without it being intentional. When you consider the temple, all the temple is a percentage of resistance to the natural laws, which inevitably will be overcome. We know the temple was destroyed, is destroyed. We know that you were born, and as such, you will die, that you understand things, and that inevitably you will come to things that you don't. And so looking into this space, that it is not a matter of you determining which of all of the things you experienced should be kept or not kept, but to understand that all things brought to you are a part of the process. They are part of the tools you were given, the rubble you will have to go through to find the secret, to find the thing which will inevitably allow you to erect the next temple. This makes my ashlar hard, brother. Like, damn.
I think that, I mean, you could go in all kinds. Thank God Pax isn't on this podcast, because it would
Oh
take all
fuck.
goddamn year. He'd be having a ball with this subject.
Oh, dude, without fail. Paxton, I love him to death. And every time I get into a I think that's why I lost my lives, because I kept going into chats with him. And he's like, these motherfuckers talk too much.
him and Soul Magic, the two of them, man. You want to get on the esoteric streak? You guys are. It's out there with those two guys.
Then you'll catch it, man. You'll catch a vibe, and you're like, suddenly, I can't let it
Yes.
go.
Yes. Pax, for me personally, Pax does that all the time. Like, I'll be scrolling, I'll see something he does, and all of a sudden it's like, I want you to listen to me, But yes, like, this kind of subject, this is the fun stuff for me. Like, I'm not completely invested in the more esoteric stuff. I like reading about it. It's really cool to kind of connect some of these ideas and whatnot and make these assumptions. But like I said in our first podcast, I'm a logistics guy. I want, paperwork in front of me, signed, sealed, delivered.
He's the practical builder.
I am. I'm the I want my plans. I want them laid out. I want those ashlars perfect. And that keystone does have use.
Okay, but you know what? There's a really important part, especially if you consider the three ancient masters. And I think this is really important, right? There's strength, wisdom, and beauty. Beauty to adorn, wisdom to contrive, strength to support. And if you can't figure that shit out, right? Because I'll be honest, I've had the esoteric conversations both with me and the multiple voices in my head, and then alike with all of the individuals that I catch on the outside. And nothing good comes of them until somebody practical comes into the situation. They hear that education and lodge that night, and they'll catch me afterwards and like, something you said just hit. And I'm like, yes, I don't know what the fuck to do with it. So I'm glad you did. I always roll back and I'm like, I imagine, Solomon, Hiram, and Hiram were sitting there just like, getting shit faced quite
Just
regularly,
bouncing ideas off each other.
smoking the sacred herb. Like, let's just
Whatever it was, they had that good frankincense. Um,
the good, right? You know,
like
whatever
I
it
got that
was.
myrrh. I got that myrrh from Tyre.
I mean, well, it's so incredible when you consider that's the depth of the analogy, right? Is there is a practical aspect to all things. And this is what gets me in magic. Inevitably, I remember seeking Solomon's when I read the Testament of Solomon in the brass vessel, and I started getting it more into the higher magic. You know how pissed I was when I came across the secret that the brass vessel is you, it's your mind. You know, I was like, this is bullshit. I was ready to buy the plane ticket and go digging. Like, I wanted it to be so physical. I wanted it to be so real in regards to tangible.
Yeah, and I feel that at least with esoterics, that's where people fail. Like alchemy, for instance, you had individuals that were doing it for the precursor to chemistry, honestly, but then you had the other aspect of people literally trying to turn lead into gold.
And it's like, oh wait. I think you missed a point.
No,
Go back
that's
to lecture 2.
you dope. Like that's the soul. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Oh God, that's an incredible series.
The Door of Truth, and that whole end thing between Ed and Truth at the end summarizes everything.
It hit hard.
Beautiful story. Such a beautiful story, and I recommend it to even if you're not an anime fan. If you just like a good developed story, the trials and tribulations of the Elric brothers are fascinating, and the conversations that both brothers Elric, the dwarf and the flask, and Hohenheim have with Truth, with that being. Yeah.
Oh, dude, I mean, it's the double-ended dicking we hope for.
About this high-level magic.
Okay, no, that's what got me, man, is because the level of like, I would watch an episode, I'd watch something, and I'd be like, these motherfuckers, right? Like, it's so heavily tied into an actual practice or a current seeking. And I was like, how many kids are watching this and they have no idea, but yet the impressions are being made?
It's a shonen anime. They're just there for the explosions. But
like,
yeah, but to us, and you're sitting there and you're seeing little, like, take for instance the character Scar. You go back to the light and darkness aspect of it. The character Scar. He starts off and his one whole arm is tattooed with a destructive pattern, a destructive rune all the way up his arm. And all he can do with that hand is destroy things. And not until later on in the story when he finds out that his brother, through a different form, as they say, alkahestry in the show, finds a different pattern. He then tattoos that on his other arm and uses that to create. The pattern on his one arm is all black, darkened tribal tattoos with arrows pointing down. The positive is open tattoos, just line work with arrows pointing in. It's little things like that that the artist did. I don't remember the artist's name who actually created the manga. Little things like that they did that make you go, he was reading stuff. Like she knew the proper, terminology, the proper things to do.
Like, this isn't bullshit. This was intentional. On some level, yeah. This was intentional. So here's something, to connect this to our previous chat and part of this, where I think it comes full circle for me is when you are in the darkness, you may think very much that you are following the light of stars that will inevitably be accessible to you. The reality is you will never reach them. But when you are seeking, you will find something. If you were in a dark room and you're fumbling around, you are feeling, you are looking, you are searching. It doesn't matter if it's in an anime, a manga, in lodge, in life, in your relationships. If you are searching for light, you will find it.
Don't stop fumbling. You'll eventually find the light switch.
My wife would disagree with you.
Listen, I can only trip over the dog so many times.
Oh shit! I'm gonna hear that. Cool. So, brother, as we come to the roundabout space, what do we want to leave our viewers with? What more so for the mental self are we going to leave on their plate tonight?
I like the idea that you brought up, dealing with karma and the Buddhist aspect of it. Buddhist, right? Buddhism? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
That you should not prescribe ideas. Nothing is good, nothing is bad. Everything is. And that you should just accept this type of knowledge and that type of knowledge and go a very wushu type style of just letting the ebb and flow. As Bruce Lee said, you must be like water. You have to, water can flow and water can crash. Water takes the shape of any container it is in. And it's that idea of going back to darkness and light. Do not put the identity of light being ultimate truth. That there still might be some harsh things in there that you need to go back to the darkness, to retreat back to the darkness, to shade yourself from the harmful aspect of light.
That's some night table stuff right there.
Listen, it is midnight by me right now. I could keep going, but we're cheap and we have the non-paid for version of Zoom.
we running out. It's like this may not be the second to third time we've done this. You'll never know. Thank you, Post.
7-part series.
Shit. If Mason's never shut the fuck up. A Masonic goodbye is 25 minutes in a parking lot, 3 cigarettes later.
Cigarettes? You smoke cigarettes?
Shit, we're cheap. Welcome to the Midwest.
For 2.5 cigars before I leave.
Fuck me, man. I would be flying home. That was the best part about Colorado. I tell you what, is like I would smoke weed at lodge, not in lodge for anyone. I know. I mean, this was after this fellowship. This was not on lodge property, though in Colorado it is legal. We just shot the shit, right? And getting to really engage in this space, man. Talk about find the light, baby. It was like Gandalf pipe. It was a good fucking time.
Social lubricant. I don't know how many conversations this has opened up, especially when it comes to the idea of the Almighty and how, my idea is it's everywhere and we can't define it. Very deist type thing. The more I have this, the bigger a philosopher I become.
That's paramount to the human condition.
I really wished I wanted to have a surprise for you tonight as we close out this episode. Brother Kevin Cotter, my co-host on the extended branch, he and his band, because he's a band director, were at a prom tonight and they were ending around 10 o'clock. And I invited him to this chat and I had hoped that he would have made a surprise appearance, but listen, he's probably beat and he probably went straight home.
We're gonna get him eventually, even if I just have to show up at lodge to talk to our organist emeritus. Like,
stop.
He'd be like, no, harder. Well, brother, I can't begin to say how much I appreciate your time on this chat and in this conversation. Lord knows I fucking love these. These are the conversations I live for. And likewise, I'm gonna make it down to Olive Branch Lodge, if nothing else, to check out this backdrop that's not CGI. I'm like, fuck me, man. This is everything I can hope
real
for.
Background. This is really, I'm holding on. These are real books that I'm moving. There's probably spirits walking around going, why the fuck is he still at lodge?
Like, oh God, don't even get me started on the answers. Well, that'll be our conversation for next time. This will be the ghosts in Freemasonry, the historic and ancestors within the lodge. Brother, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining me. Be well.